Hello and welcome. This is Dashboard Tips and Tricks. I'm Randy Bonds, and you can see my Twitter and Instagram there. Quick about me. I work for the city of Yakima. Worked there for almost a decade, and I'm excited to share some tips and tricks with you today. So let's get started. And let's just jump into tip number one. Tip number one is data matters. My coworker and I had a project. We were working on some data for the police. It was a crime dashboard. And we put together the dashboard. They had about 5 years worth of data. And when we did this, we saw just a really slow, unusable dashboard, something we did not want to put out to the public, we didn't want to release from our office. And the way we fixed this was to do some manipulating of our data beforehand. We took our data from our CAD system into our GIS nightly, so we had the opportunity to do some massaging as it came in. So what we did is we took and we split the month, the day, the year, the day of the week, the time into all different columns. And when we did this, it suddenly made a quick and much, much faster dashboard. Let's go ahead and take a look at that dashboard right now. You'll see this dashboard right here. This is our crime stats dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, you can see right away on it, there's a lot of data. There's 5 years worth of data on here. There's charts, like I mentioned, day of the week, hour of the day. So this gave some really great data, and it made it load really fast just by manipulating your data. While that's important for any application you're building, the dashboard is particularly important that you have your data formulated in such a way that it works quickly and fast. I'd add the indexing your columns that need indexed, that you're searching and matching and filtering off of, are also in there. As you can see on this dashboard, it also has another tab. Tabs are really important too, but on the second tab, you can really get a feel for how much data is out there. You can see that there is data for police districts, crimes by year, crimes by day of the week, hour of the day, just a ton of data, month and year here to give you an overall trend. As you can see, our trend is going down, which is great. That's exactly what we want to see. And that leads me into my next tip, which is tabs. Tabs matter. Tabs are a way to organize your data in a nice way. They're a way to put stuff that maybe necessarily doesn't have to do with the map on the dashboard in a different area that can provide for some deeper analysis. And they're really, really nice. Let's look at another dashboard that we put together. YakBack is a program that allows our community members to report potholes, streetlights, graffiti, that kind of stuff to the city, and allows us to quickly act on it. And this dashboard is one of our great ways to visualize the data that's happening. You'll see right away on this one, there's a list of our current requests on the left. There's some categories of all requests, and open requests was currently open, along with our total number of requests and the number open. The number closed is right behind my face here, but it's not important to see. You can also see that we've put tabs in here again. They're very, very useful. You can see overall statistics here and then graffiti statistics. Well, I could just talk and do show and tell all day long. What I would rather do is us to go through how to create these and some more of my tips together. So let's just begin with starting a whole new dashboard. We'll go over to this dashboard here. It's completely empty. I just started it, gave it a nice name, and that's it. We're going to start by grabbing a web map that I have prepared for this. So let's start by grabbing a map right here. And as you can see, all my maps is closed, but if I look at shared maps, I can search by YakBack, which is what we're looking at. I've tried to name it in such a way I knew which dashboard, which map I was going to use for this dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I like to have the home button, and I like to have it zoom in and out. It's just some nice things. Those are my preferences. You can set up your own preferences in here for what you like. Some people like scale bars with lines and rulers. I don't really see the need for one on a web map like this. It's outside my use case. Click done and add the map to my dashboard. And as you can see, as this map is coming in, I'll go ahead and zoom to the extent we want here. But as this map is coming in and loading in, you'll see that I've used the dark gray base map. a little bit of confession time here. I love this base map. It is my favorite. I like to use it as much as I possibly can, and something that looks good with cartography, I will use it. That being said, as you can see, my dashboard, it's white. It's not the same color, and it's kind of off-putting that it doesn't match. So let's go ahead just by simply clicking up here, and we're going to change it to dark. We're going to change, there it goes. Whoops, clicked it twice. Change it to dark, and you can see right away that it begins to match a little bit better. You can go in a lot more detail here under the settings wheel here, and you can define all this different stuff for exactly how you want your dashboard to look. And I would recommend, and I'll say this several times during this, make the colors match your organization. That gives a little more credence to what you're doing, and it also makes it look a little nicer. If not that specific organization, the specific project you're working on. It just brings that tightness and togetherness in the stuff you're building. All right, so we're gonna make these tabs. So to do the tabs, we're gonna need to add a couple of charts here. I'm gonna add 3 really quickly. So we're gonna start with some serial charts here, and from the requests. And I'm gonna say we're gonna group by, and we're gonna say the date open, because that's essentially the date of the request. And we're gonna go ahead and look at a year right away here. Something that I like to do is I like to make this look nice. And you can see as I mouse over some of these, you can see the different numbers that show up. I'm going to go ahead and call this one good, other than we need to do 2 more things. Let's go ahead and give it a title so we know what it is. This is requests by day. And let's do the same, not only as an internal title, but on a title for folks to see. So we're going to say request by day. Now we've got a nice title on our chart, add it in. Neat, that looks great. So just to go quickly, we're going to go and duplicate that. And then we're going to configure this. And rather than day, we're going to say we'd like it in month. Month gives us fewer items on here, but a little bit easier to read. But there's something I want you to see. As we look at April of this year, 1,200-ish, according to this chart, requests have been made. Well, I don't like the way that looks. So we're going to do a couple things to change it. But first, let's go in and make sure that we've got our titles all adjusted. Requests by month. Let's change that in the title to folks see. And then let's go into our series. Okay, I like how that looks, but one thing I really like adding is labels. And what this does is it puts the number right on top, so people can see right away the value of that bar. I'm not a big fan of this 1.2K, so I turn it off. I like to see the exact number. The other way to get the pop-up and the value access, you can see over here, is go to value access, and you can also turn off that prefix. That's a personal preference, but I think it looks nicer and it makes it easier for folks to quickly take a look at your data. And that has now been added in. And I'm going to duplicate one more time and get a request by year going here. So once it finished duplicating here, we're going to go and configure it. Now, when I change this to year, that's my minimum period. I think the bars kind of look like big square ugliness. So let's go ahead and go into the series and let's change it to a line. I think that looks nicer. Everything else is all set up the way I like. The final thing I need to do is say request by year. Do the same for the title folks see. And now we've got 3 nice charts, but our dashboard looks like garbage. So let's take a minute to make this look a lot better. You'll see right away when I go to drag an item, I have the ability, I'm going to move myself a little here so you can see this. I have the ability when I click the drag item, there is a box that shows up to stack the items. That's how you make tabs. Easy enough, right? Well, it gets a little more confusing here in that I've now got this, and if I go to add this, it's just going to create another tab. Well, I don't want that. What I want is for this item to be inside the serial chart area. So when I click over on the serial chart, to select it. Now I go to drag this, and again, it's just gonna let me. But there is magic here. You can't see this, you can't see me doing it, but trust me, I'm gonna hold shift. And as I hold shift, this changes to green. Changing to green says that it'll now be grouping. So now I can take and I can group this item along with this chart. So now they're grouped together. And I don't like those, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip them so that month is on the bottom. And then I'm going to go ahead and add requests by year into this group. Oh, again, don't like where that ended up. But to move this, you have to remember that if I were to just go ahead and click on it now, that it would drag it out of. So I have to hold that shift again as I move it. That's a big tip there. So now I'm just going to take and adjust the heights a little just to see where I think it looks pretty. Beautiful. So now I have a map page and a chart page. Next thing that I need to do is check that title, and I'm going to call it statistics. If I can spell that right today, and I can't, so we're just going to use spell check because that's what it's there for. And I've now got a map and then statistics on how these requests have come in. Easy enough, right? Let's all do that together. My next tip is that colors have context. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but I want you to remember that colors have context. So we're going to add one more chart to this as we're moving along here. We're going to add another serial chart from layer requests. We're going to go ahead and do this by type, which is the type of request that came in. And right away, I can see the big orange boxes again. So I'm going to go and look at the series. Okay, I like it like that, but I'm going to say by category. Now, right away, we see our categories have loaded in with random colors that it chose for us, which is fine. But I want it to match. Now, I could go through and do this for each one of these, but for the sake of this, we're just going to do the other. Now, when I click on that, it gives me the ability to use a color picker or the hex. Now, one of my tips here is that you go over to the original web map that it was made in. I've changed the symbology, so I'm back out here. I am looking at the symbology here and options here, and if I click other, lo and behold, my hex value comes up. So I can just copy that, jump over to my dashboard, paste it in, and I have the exact same color. Now that gray is not something spectacular, but it is there. Now the final thing I want to do is I want to go to the chart, and I like this one horizontal. That's my personal preference. Again, that all looks good. Series, I'm going to turn the labels on for sake of time and turn off prefixes because I don't like them. Do that again on the value axis. And we're going to move on with life. So now, and finally, I'm going to group this with my map. So we're grouping that with the map by holding that shift again, same trick. And now it's at the bottom of my map. So I've got that at the bottom of my map. I'm going to adjust the height a little so it looks nice, but it's nice. And the other matches the other symbology on the map, which is really nice that they match up nicely. Go ahead and save just for posterity's sake here. Finally, my next tip is actions. Actions are a really cool thing, and they tie things together on the map. We could add several items here. We're just going to leave the chart for sake of time, but you could add indicators in here and tie all these actions together. So I'm going to add an action to this item here. So we're going to configure it. This chart here, we're going to configure. We're going to go down to the Actions tab. We're going to say that when someone clicks on one of these bars, it's going to change the map. And you know what? Let's go ahead. Yeah, let's just change the map. We're going to change the map. So it's going to change requests. Now that I've done that, now if I click Other, it's going to filter the map and show me those items on the map. If I had chosen to add indicators to this, we could show the actual count of these, and it'd be even better of a dashboard. For sake of time, we're just not going to add that today. Really nice looking. The tip I will tell you is to make sure that you create, if you're going to create indicators, charts, get it all made beforehand. Make sure it's got a good name on the internal name there, under name, and then add all your actions. Otherwise, each time you add one, you have to go back to all the other items you did and then add actions to them, which just makes for a headache. So just get everything done beforehand, then tie your actions in. So really get it looking nice, looking the way you want, and tie your actions in. Now, if we were to look at this dashboard, we think ads is looking pretty great, but if we go ahead and copy this without the edit thing at the end there, so I'm just going to copy just the URL. I'm going to open this in a new tab. And if I were just to visit this dashboard from a link, you can see that there's no context to what the heck I'm looking at. So that's my final tip, is that we're going to add a header to this. Now, a header is not necessary, but there are some neat things you can do with it. And the other thing that I'd like to remind you is, like, if you're dumping this in a web page, embedding it in somewhere, maybe you don't need this. So it's really up to your context whether or not to use these tips. But I would say for this use, or I'm just going to send a link out, put it on social media, whatever, I'm going to add a header. A header also gives us a couple really cool tools. So by default, let's just go ahead and add the header. I know my logo. I think a logo is good to have. It ties in with my marketing. It ties in with what we have going on. And you know what? It adds some belief that this is a website with pertinent information. So that, I think, is really important to have. Get a logo, whether it be your organization's logo or the project you're working on. Add a logo in there. It's something nice to have. I think the colors are fine. I think everything else is great. You can add sign up. I'm going to turn that off because I don't need people signing into this thing. Go and click done, and I've got a nice header there. Now the header adds some specific tools that are only available in the header. You can see these are category selectors, so I could specifically add a category and filter the items that I wanted. I could do a number selector, date selector, or I can trash the whole thing. But let's go ahead and, for the sake of this demo, let's add a number selector. Now I've added the number selector and I'm seeing the options now, so I'm going to label it and say request ID so that people know what this goes to. I'm going to say input because I don't want people to have to spin forever. And then I'm going to say the actions. We're going to add a target and say request. Now it's going to ask me what field we're matching on. We're going to match on request ID. By default, it only shows you the fields that match the same type as this. So only integers, only numbers are allowed here. That's important to remember when you're making your data back in that first step, because otherwise you may have some weird things happen. If it's a string, you can't do it by number. So we're going to do request ID. We're going to click done. Now, if I were to type in a request, like 16931, which I think is a request number here, it's going to show me the request. Hopefully that's showing your screen as well. And if I want to clear it out, I just clear it out. Let's go ahead and hit, and we're back to where we were when we started. That is tips and tricks. Again, let's go through just each one of those as we go here. Tip number 1, data matters. Tip number 2, tabs. 3, colors equal context. It's very important to remember this. Tip 4, add actions. Make your dashboard interactive. It just makes it that much better and allows folks to explore the data. Finally, if I was remiss to say this, I'd be mad at myself, but I really hope to see you next year in Yakima. Thanks for joining me today. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat box below. You can also Instagram me, Twitter me, email me, however you want to get a hold of me. But I can't wait to see you in Yakima next year.